My scripture this morning comes from the letter of the Apostle James. James chapter 5, verses 1 through 6. James chapter 5, verses 1 through 6. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries which you are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments have become moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver have rusted, and their rust will be a witness against you, and will consume your flesh like fire. It is in the last days that you have stored up your treasure. Behold, the pay of the laborers who mowed your fields and which have been withheld by you cries out against you. And the outcry of those who did the harvesting has reached the ears of the Lord of the Sabbath. You have lived luxuriously on earth and led a life of wanton pleasure. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and put to death the righteous man. Does he not resist you? May the Lord bless the reading of his word. My message today is entitled, All That Glitters Is Not Gold. A phrase made popular by William Shakespeare as a warning to not be deceived by beautiful and precious things, and that things that may appear to have value but don't. So often is gold itself and the treasures that it represents in scriptures. Gold is an important commodity throughout most of human history, both as a material for jewelry and artwork and worship, such as in the case of the Temple of Solomon, but also as a unit of money and monetary exchange. Not many people own gold today, as it was more common in our earlier years. A matter of fact, for 41 years, you couldn't legally own gold in the United States. Between 1933 and 1974, it was illegal to own more than 5 ounces of gold personally. That was the government reducing and finally eliminating the gold standard. Originally, our currency in the U.S. was backed by gold, but that was changed in the late 60s when we came off of that. And in 1933, the government collected everybody's gold and compensated them $20.26 per ounce. But you were forced to turn in all your gold back in 1933. I don't know if anybody here remembers that, but and it was, you couldn't own more than 5 ounces. That was sort of put in so you could keep your wedding ring and your personal jewelry maybe. It wasn't until Gerald Ford in 1974 repealed that and made it allowable to own gold again. And now you can purchase and buy that commodity, or even get it directly from the mint. I've had the privilege of visiting our U.S. Mint in Washington, D.C., and they've got a nice little gift shop, with all the beautiful things, and I've been there, and they mopped up the drool after I left, and it's pretty nice. The U.S. has 4 gold depositories, the largest one being Fort Knox, where that has about 4,603 tons of gold. stored there. And then we've got more in the 3 other smaller depositories. And even as we read at the beginning, we talk about in Revelation 21:21 about the streets of the New Jerusalem being paved in gold and its precious nature. But you see, it isn't the gold itself that's the issue. It's what we do with it is the real spiritual issue. You see, there were lots of rich guys in the Bible. Abraham, David, Solomon. I always talk about the part where King David is gathering stuff to build the temple, which his son Solomon would ultimately do. But David started gathering materials, wood from Lebanon, and taking donations of gold. And he himself donated 7,000 talents of gold out of his personal funds, not out of the state treasury. These were men of great wealth, whose wealth did not possess them. And you see, that's the key quality. Jesus confronted a rich man and told him that he had to sell all of his possessions and give to the poor, and then come and follow me. And the man went away sorrowful, for he had great wealth. And Jesus told his disciples that it was harder for a camel, no, it was easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. And you might ask yourself, why is that, Vance? Well, it seems to be that wealth, which could be translated also as economic power, is like other forms of power, often talked about. What's the old saying? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, since wealth is economic power, the scriptures in many places talk about its corrupting effects on the hearts of those who possess it. Not that it's in and of itself, as I said, bad to possess, because there are plenty of good, decent men and women who were quite wealthy, who gave generously and shared their wealth and were not consumed by money, even though they had a whole bunch. And perhaps you have met people like that, who you may know that are well off by the Western world standards, but are good and generous people who'd be willing to give you the shirt off their back and always there to help and care for others, because that's the true purpose of all our possessions. They're just things that we have for a while that God has entrusted with us. Our houses, our cars, our bank accounts. These are all things that we get to manage for a little while, because we certainly can't take it with you, as they say. And we won't need it where we're going. They've got plenty, as you can see from the text in Revelation. We won't need it there. But the thing is, what have you done with what God has given you? And has it caused you to act in an inappropriate way toward your fellow man or woman? Here, the Apostle James condemns those whose wealth has tainted their hearts and caused them to become greedy and abusive toward others. It tells them, your riches have rotted, your garments have become moth-eaten. They've hoarded, they've put them away and not shared them. This rusted treasure. will be a witness against you at the end times, that you have stored up this treasure. You know, if you have silver or gold, but especially silver, you know, that stuff tarnishes after so often. You got to clean it, you know. I remember as a little kid having to clean grandma's and mom's silverware every couple of years to get out the stuff, and that was one of the jobs that the kids had to do, was, you know, spend like a couple hours rubbing those spoons, you know, until you could like see yourself in the mirror with them. Oh man. Gold will do so as well, but not as quickly as silver, pure silver. But, you know, it is. You, just like every other physical thing, it wears out. But Jesus told the people, store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where rust and moths don't destroy, nor thieves break in and steal. Because that's true value. Everything that you do here on earth for another one is remembered in heaven. Not that we can ever earn our way to heaven through works, but it's through faith in Jesus Christ. But the scriptures tell us there in Revelation that the other books will be opened too, and will be judged on what we've done in the flesh, both good and evil. Listen to what James here had said of these rich people. Behold, the pay of the laborers who mowed your fields, which has been withheld by you, cries out against you. And the outcry of those who did the harvesting has reached the Lord of the Sabbath. Have you been cheating your workers, your friends, taking advantage of other people? Don't think you're going to get away with that. God knows all, sees all. He hears the cry of the poor and the oppressed, and will bring them justice, whether in this life or the next. You have lived luxuriously on the earth and led a life of wanton pleasure. You have fattened your hearts in the day of judgment. Doesn't it always get in your craw when you look on television or on the news and you see the opulence, you know, displays of wealth and power for appearance sake, you know. Oh yes, I just bought my 4th mansion there in California this day. You know, gold toilet seats, or, you know, whatever ridiculous private jets and all that. Again, stuff is just stuff. But some people like to flaunt it, to show it off as status. And it can very easily corrupt your heart. Because then you begin to think more about self instead of God and of others. Often those also can lead to a lifestyle of debauchery. You're always seeing, you know, scandals about drug abuse and criminal activity and stuff like that, often among the rich and famous. You condemned and put to death the righteous man, and he does not resist you. But God does keep account. So now, coming back to all of us. Most of us are not wealthy by Western standards. Or if you are, you've done a pretty good job of hiding it. But of course, compared to a majority of the world, just about anybody who lives in the United States is well off. If you've ever had the privilege to visit another country, especially a third world country or parts of the world where poverty is rampant, I'll tell you what. I met a lot of people in India who would trade places with me in a heartbeat, who lived in shacks and huts and scrounged for food. I remember going somewhere as we were doing work there in India, and we were staying at a guest home. We were doing a revival and medical missionary set up in this one particular area, village, and that evening before the revival, we went to our host homes for dinner. And you've heard me tell this story several times before. Dinner was 2 hard-boiled eggs. And I got 2 because I was the guest. Yeah. We're all rich sitting here. And so the question we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do with what God has given us? Because we will be held accountable. Are we going to use our homes and cars and bank accounts for God's service? Are we going to continue to give to this church, as many of you generously do? To give to our local association, Dover, to BGAV, the Baptist General Association of Virginia, who just sent us a thank you and about the donations, to support missions both here locally and in our state and around the world. And besides what we do corporately, individually, to help out others who we may know need some help. Maybe a family in the tribal community. Maybe somebody you know through work who's going through some hard times. Maybe it's a distant relative. Maybe it's a friend of a friend. He who gives to those in need lends to the Lord. And that is a true statement. Scriptures tell us at the end, at the time of judgment, Jesus says that what you have done to the least of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me. Will we honor God with our wealth and receive the true gold of heaven? That's the good news for today. Thanks be to God. We're going to sing an appropriate hymn of invitation and response today. Hymn number 357, Take My Life and Let It Be. Take all of it. There's a verse in there that says, Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Let us sing hymn number 357.